Hello guys, and welcome to a new video, and today I'm going to start possibly a new series talking about the advantages, disadvantages of healers when it comes to pushing Mythic Plus, with the hopes of giving you a better idea of which healer you might be more suited towards. And over the last couple of weeks, I've been doing a decent amount of Mythic Plus, doing keys from 14, 15s to 16s, playing multiple different healers, and in this video I want to talk about Restoration Shaman, Resto Druid, and Discipline Priest, the good, the bad, and basically my personal opinions when it comes to doing these Mythic Plus keys. And if you would like to see more of these type of videos covering different type of healers, please leave your comments below. I want to gauge interest. I want to see which healer I should start gearing next or playing next. So if you like this videos, like and subscribe and let me know in the comments which healer. So let's go and get started. And we're gonna start off with my boy Restoration Shaman. Now it is kind of funny to see Resto Shaman climbing the ladder in terms of Mythic Plus popularity, in terms of players playing Resto Shaman in hierarchies, because he was deemed as a very bad healer at the start of season 2. It didn't really get a whole lot of changes, but now it's basically the second best healer when it comes to popularity, and I think there is a good reason for it. I think Resto Shaman was undervalued by a lot of players. It is still a utility machine. You still provide a bunch of different things. You have an amazing interrupt, you can have a knock-up, knock-back depending on how you talent into it. You have an AoE stone, you have purge, you have decurse, which is pretty good for certain dungeons out there. You have a raid buff in terms of Sky Fury, and most importantly, you have Bloodlust, which means that if you're playing a little bit off meta team, or if you don't have a Bloodlust from the DPSers, you probably will have Resto Shaman as the de facto healer because of the Bloodlust. Now I know Preservation Evoker also provides Bloodlust, but it is far less popular. So with Resto Shaman you have a lot of utility, and we'll talk about some of the ways of increasing player survivability later down the line, but I want to talk about one of the big draws which I feel a lot of people might gravitate towards Resto Shaman is simplicity. If you ask 10 people, 9 people out of 10 will probably tell you that Resto Shaman is arguably one of the easiest healers to get into World of Warcraft when starting healing for the first time, and I don't disagree with this. I think at the base the rotation of Resto Shaman is relatively simplistic. It is a reactive healer, it is a ranged healer, you have a lot of utility, and it is going to appeal to a lot of players out there. On top of that, Totemic Resto Shaman provides an insane amount of passive healing. You press your Surging Totem, you press your Healing Stream Totem, those are going to provide a good amount of passive healing, on top of the fact that there are certain totems that are also going to shoot out chain heals that are going to be free because of Lively Totem's talent that you get from Totemic, which we'll talk about a lot. Based on my experience, for a lot of dungeons out there, depending on the key level, Surging Totem and Healing Stream Totem can actually take care of a lot of these non-lethal events, and you are free to do other things, whether it's going to be DPSing or doing something else. So again, you have to remember there is going to be AoE situations, there's going to be bosses which require a lot of healing, and you're going to be shifting through your cooldown. Someone takes single target damage and you need to top them up quickly because the next damaging event is happening. You're gonna press Healing Surge. Hopefully you have Tidal Waves buffs on top of that, but overall there is a lot of comfort in playing Totemic Resto Shaman. Now I haven't played Farseer too much. I feel it is a bit more difficult to play or pull off properly, but it's something that I might try out in the future. Let me know if you like for me to try Farseer in these hierarchies and things like that. But I don't want to talk about all about how simple Resto Shaman is to play, how much passive healing Totemic provides and all those things. At the end of the day, it is, how do I say, a bit more difficult to play than most people might think. Because first of all, the difference between a good Resto Shaman and an average Resto Shaman is going to be how you handle the utility buttons that you have. And you have a bunch of utility buttons that you can take care of, using them at the right times. Again, we talked about interrupt, tracking interrupts, interrupting the right mobs. All of this takes a little bit of practice. And there is a secret skill level. I don't want to say secret because most Resto Shamans are fully aware of the mana management that you have to deal with. And I think it's purely dependent on the content and the group that you're in, the dungeon that you're doing. Because I could do a bunch of Mythic Plus dungeons as Resto Shaman where the group knows what to do, when to press interrupts, when to press defensives, and I won't have to drink much at all as a Restoration Shaman. I'll be managing my mana because there is multiple ways to optimize your mana consumption. For example, you don't really want to hard cast chain heal all that much. You want to let your totems handle the free chain heals with Lively Totem's talent, and you want to kind of a lot of the times ask yourself, can my passive healing from Surging Totem and Healing Stream, can that cover this kind of moment? Do I have to cast Healing Surge? Do I have to cast anything more, or can I let my totems do the work? And this is the kind of thing that you can optimize, get better with Resto Shaman, but there are going to be keys, especially in puck situations. Certain keys are just going to require you from the get-go just really keep everyone topped up, because they're always going to be in danger of getting one shot or close to getting one shot. And that's where you might be like, holy crap, I am going to have some mana issues as Resto Shaman if I don't really buckle down and manage my mana. So my mana kind of management has been very different depending on the kit I'm doing, depending on the dungeon that I'm doing, and it's something that can take time to get used to. And sometimes you might not even be able to do much about this because everyone's taking too much damage, everyone's not pressing the defenses, not interrupting, and then you just are burning through your mana like crazy. There are situations where you might be, everyone's taking damage, you have high tide proc, you don't have totems available to proc the free chain heal from library totems, and you might have to hardcast a chain heal. There is going to be times like that. So I think there is an additional skill level attached to Resto Shaman when it comes to mana management, knowing when your passive healing is allowed or will take care of all the dangerous moments, knowing when to pop your cooldowns, knowing when you need to actually, like, you know, keep everyone topped up, and just basically making sure that throughout the whole dungeon you are managing your mana, because this can be a problem, especially because you can burn through your mana really fast in these oh crap moments. So we talked about the good, the bad, the simple, and the mana management and all those things for Resto Shaman, but I do want to talk about some of the little extra edge that Resto Shaman has when it comes to high-end Mythic Plus pushing. And I know a lot of people are aware of this, but I just want to showcase this for new players coming in, because you do have talents like Ancestral Vigor, which increases players' HP in the same way that Downpour, and those things stack. So as an example, you have my Resto Shaman here who has almost 10 million HP. I can press an ability associated with Ancestral Vigor to increase my HP to 10.8 million. I can press my Surging Totem with Downpour to increase that even further. Of course, the Downpour management is going to be a lot more difficult because you have a relatively long cooldown. Managing Ancestral Vigor is going to be a lot easier. As an example, where Resto Shaman really shines are dungeons like TOP or Theater of Pain. Having a ranged interrupt for the first boss is really nice. Having Decurse is really nice. Having Purge is really nice. Having these, how do I say, HP increasing talents is really nice for the arena boss because it was a big smash. Everyone is going to be most likely relatively stacked up in that dungeon, so your Surging Totem can do a lot of its work. Having a lot of AoE kind of abilities for the last boss is also really nice, or AoE CC abilities. So there are certain dungeons where Resto Shaman is arguably very strong, and there are certain dungeons where Resto Shaman just has to constantly heal and your mana management can be put to a test. So take your pick. And now let's talk about my boy Restoration Druid, arguably one of the biggest underdog healers right now when it comes to high-end Mythic Plus pushing. And I've been waffling on about Resto Druid for a month and a half now in terms of how much I see the potential of this healer. And I think one of the reasons why it's not really picked in higher end, because balance shoot is also very strong. People don't want to have duplicate utilities. And at the end of the day, healing with Resto Druid, if you are a competitive player of this spec, you know the full potential. I've done a couple of dungeons with Resto Druid healing checks, like for example Clef Candle Boss doesn't even feel like a healing check for Resto Druid. These rot type of fights. Now there are a couple of builds for Resto Druid available. I am running that double life bloom build and I'm loving it. I think these healing checks, these rot type of fights that I fear with other healers, when I'm playing my Oracle Discipline Priest, especially after the nerfs, I'm a little bit scared when coming into Cleft, and I'm like, Candle King is gonna be spicy. When I'm playing my Resto Druid, I don't even think about this. It's not even an anxiety-inducing boss anymore. So Resto Druid definitely has its positives when it comes to these raw type of fights, when it comes to meeting HPS checks. I genuinely think this healer is absolutely busted in the right hands. Now, I say the right hands because I think there are moments where I was caught out doing these dungeons and there was damage happening and I didn't expect the damage to be as big, and I didn't really have the HOTS out there. I didn't really prep for it, and I was kind of scrambling and almost in a panic mode, and I was like, oh crap, someone's going to die because I didn't prep for this. And this is what I feel like a lot of new Resto Druids feel like when they're approaching these Mythic Plus dungeons. They're not really fully aware of all the damage patterns, and it can feel anxiety inducing because you need to know everything about a dungeon in order to optimize this spec in a really good way, especially if you want to do a bit of that damage and try to squeeze in DPS numbers in between the healing checks. So this is why this healer, in my opinion, has an extremely high skill ceiling. It might be easy to pick up, and I know anytime I make these videos about which healer is easiest and I rank Resto Druid in like the top tier, somewhere close to the top in terms of being one of the most difficult healers to pick up, there is always comments telling me Resto Druid super easy, you just rejuve and all that, and it just comes across like there's a lot of players who just haven't played Resto Druid in a high end capacity, because if you really want to optimize this healer, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of knowledge, especially if you want to optimize your DPS and healing numbers. This is why Resto Druid has one of the highest margins in terms of healer DPS, or in terms of Resto Druid DPS, where a lot of players might not really pump out a lot of damage as Resto Druids, and the top end players will do a lot, but that's also based on the healing requirements, people pressing defensives. So overall, I think Resto Druid is a very fun healer spec right now. There is multiple builds out there, you can mess around with quite a few of them. I'm running that Wild Stalker, I'm running that Double Life Bloom, and I'm having a blast. Rot type of fights, healing checks, if you know how to play this healer, numero uno. Now, I do have to say, when I'm playing my Resto Shaman or when I'm playing my Oracle Discipline Priest, again, Resto Shaman, you have ways of increasing players' HP, but on Ancestral Vigor, Downpour, Oracle Discipline Priest has shielding. So there are certain bosses, for example, someone is going to take a big hit in the next couple of seconds. An example could be Cleft last boss. When you get that purple circle, you have to run out, and depending on how high of a key you're doing, depending if that person has defensives, they might be in danger. So if I'm playing Resto Druid, I might be able to provide them Iron Bark, but that's not always the case. If I'm playing Resto Shaman, I can increase their HP. If I'm playing Oracle Discipline Priest, I can give them shield. So there are certain cases where I'm like, oh man, I wish I would have something like that as Resto Druid to help them out a little bit more, but I don't think it's a deal breaker. But at the end of the day, you do have Iron Bark, and again, Restoration Shaman doesn't even have a dedicated tank cooldown. Most of the time I end up using Spirit Link as an oh crap moment, the tank is about to die. And I don't want to talk about Discipline Priest and Pain Suppression because that thing is extremely busted. But overall, Resto Druid, an incredible healer when you know how to play. The healing checks are made easy if you know how to play this spec. It is a bit more difficult to really optimize in terms of skill ceiling and all those things, but honestly, the HPS checks, if you can anticipate it, if you know what to do, Resto Druid is definitely undervalued. We do have to talk a little bit about Resto Druid gameplay now. I do have fun with my Resto Druid, but I know a lot of people come to my stream and they will tell me that, hey, how do you feel about this iteration of Resto Druid where you're pressing HOTS in order for your regrowth to do the heavy lifting? It's been like that for a little while now, and I don't know, I still kind of enjoy my Druid. It is very different compared to Dragonflight Resto Druid, which was more focused around Grove Guardians. You could say it was a pet class in Dragonflight, especially when it comes to Mythic Plus, because you would press your Grove Guardians and do a lot of the heavy lifting. In the War Within, it's a lot different. Grove Guardians doesn't play as big of a part depending on which hero build you're running and things like that, but the gameplay is very different. And I do think that the new tier set bonus that you have right now is kind of interesting, because if you look at the 4 set bonus, there is a chance of getting some of those missing HOTS being applied on a target depending on insurance procs and all those things. And a lot of the times it might be a missing rejuvenation being applied. And that is of course is going to give you extra stacks of abundance, which is a very popular talent right now. And that is going to empower your main ability in terms of regrowth. And I like that kind of synergy. There's also multiple different ways of optimizing your healing as Resto Druid, multiple different builds out there. Let me know how you feel about this healer. I definitely think it is an underdog out there. And now let's talk about the meta healer when it comes to Mythic Plus, and that's going to be Oracle Discipline Priest. Now, Oracle Discipline Priest did receive a hefty nerf, and that nerf is definitely going to be felt, especially if you're doing high rot type of dungeons beforehand, and then the nerf came in, and then all of a sudden your Candle King is a lot harder to do now. So they are felt, but at the end of the day, you have a plethora of utility and ways of handling it. Like I mentioned in my previous video, is Oracle dead? As long as Oracle is able to meet these healing checks to some extent, groups will want that priest utility. And oh, I don't know, this season just feels like a priest utility season, man. Mass Dispel, anytime I'm playing a Again, Resto Shaman, Resto Druid, I'm doing this workshop and there's a lot of magic dispels coming out. I'm like, where's my master spell? And on top of that, there's a lot of groups out there, especially if you're pugging higher end, that, hey, I'm not going to change my route. We need Mind Suit, and we're going to do the exact route that I've been doing with a Priest Mind Suit. Mind Suit is so, I don't want to say mandatory, but it is ingrained in a lot of these pug routes already, and a lot of people are unwilling to change the route if they don't have Mind Suit, which is kind of crazy. But just keep that in mind, that is a thing. So Priest utility is very, very, very strong this season, and I haven't even mentioned the biggest culprit, which is PI or Power Infusion. DPS players are going to froth at their mouth at the possibility of getting PI or Power Infusion, to an extent that certain DPS players don't even know how to play the game without PI. So, rant over. Priest utility this season is wild. It is bigger than most other seasons, in my honest opinion. How do I feel about Oracle Discipline Priest in terms of playing it after the nerfs? I kinda still like it. This healer is growing on me because the shielding is still quite powerful. You still can provide powerful shields on your party members. We talked about this. There's multiple dungeons out there where a person is going to get hit, and you get an indicator if you have these targeted weak auras. Someone is about to take big amount of damage. They might die because they might not have a defensive or they already used it. Use a shield on them. We talked about Resto Shaman and Social Vigor Downpour combo as well. Utilizing talents like Wheel and Woe is going to be an important aspect of playing this healer. Make sure you track the stacks and things like that. And this healer is not going to be for everyone. There's quite a few people that come down to my stream telling me that Oracle Discipline Priest can sometimes feel clunky. And honestly, I can see where they're coming from, but I can tell you with time, once you play this a bit more, once you get used to with the whole premonition, with the whole penance, shielding type of interaction that you get, it gets easier, it gets more fun. At least I'm enjoying my time. So the overall summary of Oracle Discipline Priest is that your shields are still very powerful, and I think if you resonate with that kind of shielding gameplay, this is the niche. Blizzard wanted this healer or this hero build to retain the niche of shielding, which I think is fun. Again, I resonate with that shielding gameplay. I think you will feel the nerves, but I think there's a lot of people cooking up different builds. I even tried out multiple different builds to see how Oracle Discipline Priest is going to deal with things like Candle King or Rot type of fights, because it definitely requires more effort, but you have so many tools at your disposal that I think if you can play Oracle Discipline Priest really well and you can make use of all the tools that you have, you will be able to meet those healing checks. But for example, I might be doing Candle King as an Oracle Discipline Priest and I'll be telling myself, this would have been much easier as a Resto Druid, but you can't have everything. So at the end of the day, Oracle, in my eyes, is still strong. I still think it's fun to play. I think the premonitions are growing on me. Again, I was a premonition hater at the start because I felt it was kind of clumsy. It was kind of annoying to fit them all in at the right times and things like that, but it's growing on me. I think it's also to do with the fact that the shielding is so nice with it. I think the utility is very strong. I am kind of enjoying Oracle, and I know it is a powerful healer, but I am trying to mess around with different builds, mess around with different stat priorities, because I still think this healer is in that wild west situation where people are still trying to figure out what is the best way to play this. And I kind of really like that. Overall summary of these three healers: play whichever healer you enjoy more. All of these three healers that I talked about here, from Resto Shaman, Resto Druid to Oracle or Discipline Priest, they play in a very different way. They all have different niches, they all have different skill ceilings, they all have something that is good and bad about all of them. Now, the Oracle Discipline Priest nerfs have brought it down. It used to be way ahead of everyone else. Now I think it's more in line with everyone else, but the utility is still going to push them harder when it comes to that, you know, pug and or meta perception. So if you're someone who doesn't want to spend a lot of time in the queue simulator right now, Oracle Discipline Priest is probably going to give you the highest chance of an invite. But that doesn't mean you can't push keys with Resto Shaman or Resto Druid. I think Resto Druid is extremely underrated. In the right hands, it is arguably the best healer when trying to meet those HPS checks. I think Resto Shaman is very easy to pick up. Takes a little more time to master because of the mana management, because of the utility buttons and all those things. But Resto Shaman is going to appeal for a lot of players as well. At the end of the day, raid buffs are important, utility is important, but meeting those healing checks is also extremely important. And playing a healer that you enjoy or gravitate towards is the most important thing out there. So guys, I hope this video gave you an insight in terms of how each healer plays, or the different advantages, different disadvantages, and I hope that this gave you a better understanding of which healer you might gravitate towards. And if it didn't, let me know if you would like me to cover them more in depth and things like that. If you would like to see more of this type of videos covering other healers, the advantages, disadvantages, leave your comments below in terms of what healer you would like to see next, and I'll see you in my next video.